2 weeks. That's about how long the excitement from launching an equity crowdfunding campaign lasts for most founders. And then everything stops. Here's the part almost nobody explains to you before you launch. Every campaign starts with a big spike, followed by a whole lot of flat, including the campaigns that end up being wildly successful. And when your campaign goes flat in the second or third week, it's not a sign that something is wrong. You don't need to panic if you're prepared. What you are experiencing is the most predictable and repeatable pattern in the industry. And up until now, it was just a bullet point in your platform onboarding materials when you signed up to launch for a campaign. And today, we're going to do what might be the first ever deep dive into this phenomenon. Hello, my name is Michael, and I'm here to help you navigate the real world behind the scenes equity crowdfunding process so that you can be better prepared and avoid costly mistakes and missed opportunities. So, as you continue to do research online about equity crowdfunding, you're going to find this flat spike pattern described as a U shaped curve. Technically, sure, but the letter U implies a quick drop followed by a short stint at the bottom, which almost immediately spikes right back up again. For most equity crowdfunding campaigns, what you're actually looking at is a long, flat stretch, sometimes months, between two spikes. I call it the field goal instead, because that's what it actually feels like to live through. The platforms will mention this to you briefly somewhere during the onboarding process, but nobody is going to sit you down and fully explain what the middle really looks like and what you're going to need to survive it. I've managed multiple campaigns through this field goal process. I've also been brought in to the middle of campaigns that were experiencing the horrors of it in real time, and we're looking to have someone guide them out of it. And the good news is that I've got a real graph from one of these campaigns that shows precisely what this phenomenon looks like from behind the scenes. And we'll take a look at that in just a little bit. But before we get into understanding the patterns of an investment campaign, just make sure you've taken my equity crowdfunding reality check. It's a free course that walks you through the three most valuable questions that you can ask yourself before you launch a campaign. How much do you really need to raise? How many investors does that actually require? And what does it cost to reach them? Again, it's totally free, and it is truly the best first step that you can take before launching an equity crowdfunding campaign. Okay, here's what's actually going on when that line goes flat. Before you launch a campaign, you're usually building interest in your upcoming opportunity to invest in your company. Uh, Emails, conversations, whatever channels you actually have direct access to, you're warming up your biggest fans, your most dedicated customers, getting them ready so that the moment that the campaign goes live, they can finally act on this ownership opportunity that you've been telling them about. And that is why the launch looks like a spike. It's not just random enthusiasm. It's every person you had direct access to and had already built interest with, all converting at the same time because you controlled that audience and you controlled the timing. That's the one part of this whole process you actually have full control over, and it shows up exactly the way you'd expect, all at once. That's the spike at the beginning. But this doesn't last long. It takes about 2 weeks for that first group to fully move through your process. And once they do, that's it. They are all now official investors in your company and they go back to their normal lives. So let me show you exactly what this looks like. This is a real graph from a real campaign. The dollar amounts and the dates have been removed since what matters here is the shape, not the specific numbers. So look at this shape. Big spike at the beginning from your biggest fans. A long middle stretch of basically manufacturing demand. And then there's a big spike at the very end that's mostly rooted in FOMO and people who waited until the last minute. We're not going to focus too much on that final spike in this video, but it's one of the most active periods of your campaign, second only to the launch. Now, here's the thing I want you to really sit with. This isn't just one company's story. This is an industry-wide pattern, a repeatable, predictable pattern that shows up across equity crowdfunding, campaign after campaign, company after company. Different products, different founders, different amounts raised, same shape. And I'm showing this to you now so you can be ready for it when it eventually happens to you. Let's go back to that field goal thing for a second. Remember the first spike, the one right at the launch? Again, that was your biggest fans, your most dedicated customers, everyone you'd already built interest with before you ever went live, all converting at once because you control that audience and you control the timing. But now there's a second, completely different group of people who matter here as well. Once your own people are done going through the process, the only organic audience left is the platform's own investors. And they have never heard of you. I made a video that gets into exactly what that audience is waiting for before they'll take you seriously. And it connects directly to what's happening here. So the link to that video is somewhere over here. So this audience, the platform's audience, is watching. They're waiting to see if your campaign actually has legs. So the exact moment that your controllable audience runs dry is the same moment that a completely different, much harder to convince audience starts paying attention. And they need to see continued momentum, not silence. And that is the trap. Your natural momentum runs out right when a whole new audience needs proof that it exists. And this is the underlying foundation of the long, flat valley of doom that happens to every campaign. So how do you get through it? By simply being prepared in advance with tools and strategies. Now, these are separated into three broad categories, and we're not going to go into detail on each of these in this video. I'll make sure to cover each one individually in future videos. But for now, just know that they exist so you can start thinking about them in advance. First, active campaign management. This is your most valuable tool. Posting updates that get sent to your followers, responding to questions from prospective investors, keeping the campaign alive day to day instead of just letting it sit there on autopilot. I cannot think of a single campaign that would survive without this. It's free, it's not always easy, and it's quite honestly a daily grind, but it does pay off if you're willing to do it. The second one, paid advertising. And I'll be honest with you, raising money costs money. Once your warm leads are gone, paid ads are often one of the only levers left to bring in new eyes, and that costs real dollars you need to have budgeted for before you launch. Some platforms are fully dedicated to ads, and other platforms insist that in a perfect world, you shouldn't even need them. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle of those two, but ads are an incredibly useful tool in navigating the valley of doom. And then third, there's other marketing opportunities, media collaborations, public relations, webinars, anything that gets your name, your investment opportunity, and your traction in front of people who have never heard of you. And no, convincing a cold audience to make an illiquid investment in your company is not fun. But it does work well enough to get you through the middle of your campaign. So now here's the part that you really need to consider. Each of these three things takes real skill sets in order to be executed in a valuable way. Marketing savvy to get your message out, branding and design to make your material stand out, financial resources, since none of this is free. And of course, connections, people you can call on for a newsletter mention, a podcast spot, a warm introduction. So here's a question worth asking yourself right now before you're navigating all of this during a live campaign. If you're planning to pull these skills from inside your own company, your own marketing person, your designer, whoever's already on your team, are you also accounting for what that does to your actual business while the campaign is running? This is not free help. It's time and attention pulled away from the day-to-day operations that the company still needs to run. And that's what you need to bring to the table so that you can survive the middle section of an equity crowdfunding campaign. So, my goal is to have you thinking about all of this before you launch. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. There is a real predictable pattern to almost every equity crowdfunding campaign. Spike at the beginning, long flat stretch in the middle, and then a spike at the end. It happens to everyone, including the founders that end up raising huge amounts of capital. And once you know that pattern is coming, it stops being something that happens to you and it becomes something that you can actually plan for. And if you're serious about getting ready for a campaign, the reality check is still where you start. Again, it's free, it's a full course. The link is in the description, and I'll do it with you. And if you haven't seen it yet, I made a video that breaks down why the platform's audience of investors behaves the way it does, and it'll help you better understand that aspect of the field goal shaped middle stretch. It's worth watching if you haven't already, and the link is somewhere on the screen. If you've got a question about the industry or your specific situation, just please drop it in the comments. I promise I read all of them. And as always, thank you for your support of this channel. And thank you for trusting me at this point of your equity crowdfunding journey.